Peter Joseph Judge, born in Dublin in 1955, didn't simply fall into crime, he embraced it. From an early age, he seemed to view rules as obstacles to be broken and authority as something to be challenged. Where other boys sought approval, Judge craved dominance. At 13, he made a decision that set him apart. He robbed a firearms dealer. This wasn't the act of a mischievous child, but of someone who wanted to arm himself, to show he wasn't afraid of consequences. Judge saw weapons as power, and power was what he wanted most. Through his teenage years, Judge was never one to walk away from confrontation. A perceived insult, a minor slight, or a territorial challenge, he answered each with violence. To him, every fight was an opportunity to cement his reputation. Every robbery was a chance to prove he wasn't just another street thug. By his early 20s, he was no longer satisfied with petty crime. The 1979 Fairview bank robbery was a turning point. Walking in with a gun, Judge wasn't thinking about the money alone. He was thinking about the statement. Robbing a bank was a declaration that he had graduated into bigger leagues. When caught with firearms during a post office robbery soon after, he accepted the risk. To Judge, being arrested was part of the game, not a deterrent. In 1980, when he was sentenced to 10 years in Mountjoy, he didn't see it as defeat. He saw it as an opportunity. Mountjoy Prison became Judge's training ground. Many young criminals were broken by prison life, but Judge thrived. To him, it was a place to sharpen his instincts and to learn from men who had already built reputations. He studied the hierarchies, the way influence worked, and the role violence played inside those walls. He recognized that survival wasn't just about physical strength. It was about showing others you would never bend. His hunger strike was a calculated move. He wasn't trying to win sympathy. He was proving that he couldn't be broken. Judge also understood networking. He aligned himself with hardened criminals, listening, observing, and adopting their tactics. Prison gave him patience. No longer did he lash out at every provocation. Instead, he began thinking several steps ahead. When his release came in the late 1980s, Judge was not the same man who had entered Mountjoy. He walked out with a clear strategy. Fear could be turned into business, and violence could be used not just for revenge, but for control. Dublin was on the edge of a heroin wave, and Judge saw the chaos as opportunity. Judge didn't dive into Dublin's drug trade recklessly. He watched first. He studied how others ran their operations, where they succeeded, and more importantly, where they failed. Then, he moved in with precision. His rule of no credit was central to his philosophy. He didn't want to be chasing debtors. To Judge, money was respect. If a dealer couldn't pay up front, they weren't fit to be part of his network. It was a cold, business-like rule, but it also created constant fear. His dealers knew there was no safety net, no second chance. Judge's approach was methodical. Cannabis brought steady profits, but heroin was where the real money was. He expanded carefully, ensuring that Finglas, Cabra, and Ballymun became his controlled zones. His reputation as a man willing to do anything, beatings, torture, or worse, meant few dared test him. From Judge's perspective, fear was more effective than loyalty. Loyalty could waver, but fear kept people in line. He believed that if every associate feared the consequences of betrayal more than they feared rivals or guards, his empire would survive. Even when guards seized £70,000 in suspected drug profits in 1994, Judge didn't panic. He saw it as a temporary setback, not a fatal blow. In his mind, the business would continue because his dealers had no choice but to keep supplying the money. When Judge ordered the killing of Michael Godfrey in 1993, it wasn't about anger, it was about principle. Godfrey had cheated him in a deal in Amsterdam, refusing to repay him for poor quality hashish. For Judge, it wasn't the loss of money that mattered, it was the challenge to his authority. He arranged the killing to be deliberate and clinical. Godfrey was abducted, then executed with 2 bullets to the head. To outsiders, it was brutal. To Judge, it was necessary. The message was worth more than the money. No one cheats PJ Judge and lives. 3 years later, William Jock Colbury tested him. Colbury had been close, but closeness didn't buy immunity. Reports suggested Colbury pocketed money from a heroin deal, and undermined Judge's standing. Judge's response was to make an example of him. Colbury vanished, with whispers of torture and a hidden grave spreading across Dublin. Judge wanted those whispers. He knew the rumors of Colbury's death would travel faster and further than any threat he could issue directly. Fear, once again, was his chosen weapon. In Judge's world, these murders weren't excesses. They were business decisions. He didn't kill indiscriminately. He killed with purpose, to control the narrative, to remind everyone that disloyalty carried the ultimate price. For years, Judge's strategy worked. Fear insulated him. Violence silenced rivals. But every empire has cracks, and his came in the form of debt. In 1996, when a shipment was seized, Judge found himself owing £130,000 to Marlow Highland. Judge had built his empire on the idea that he couldn't be challenged, but now he was vulnerable. Worse, his relationship with Ellen Highland, Marlow's sister, complicated matters further. It blurred the lines between business and family, loyalty and betrayal. Judge's instinct was the same as always: project strength. He didn't pay the debt immediately, perhaps believing his reputation would protect him. But in doing so, he made the one mistake he had always punished in others: he showed weakness. On December 7th, 1996, as he walked from the Royal Oak pub in Finglas with Ellen, his enemies struck. A gunman on a motorcycle pulled up, and Judge was shot twice in the head. The execution was swift, efficient, and left no room for doubt. His reign was over. Judge's death didn't surprise many in Dublin's underworld. To some, it was inevitable. He had built his empire on fear, but fear also isolated him. The same brutality that kept his dealers in line made him a marked man. When guards later suggested he may have been an informant, it painted his final days in an even darker light. If true, it meant Judge had betrayed the very code he demanded from others. For rivals like Highland, it only confirmed that his time had come. In the weeks after his murder, his ally Mark Dwyer was gunned down. The empire he had built collapsed quickly, carved up by others, but the methods remained. Highland and those who followed adopted the same formula: strict control, no credit, and swift, brutal punishment for those who disobeyed. From Judge's perspective, his rise had always been about control. His every decision, whether robbing a gun shop as a boy, organizing a bank robbery, or torturing an associate, had been rooted in the belief that fear equaled power, and for a time, he was right. But his downfall showed the flaw in his thinking. Fear made him powerful, but it also made him alone. When the moment came, no one stood by him. His empire dissolved the moment the gunman pulled the trigger. PJ Judge lived by the belief that violence solved everything. He used it to settle scores, to build an empire, and to maintain discipline. From his perspective, every brutal act was justified if it reinforced his dominance. But Dublin's underworld is unforgiving. The same system he perfected turned on him, as it would later turn on many others. His legacy is not just the murders he ordered or the fear he inspired, but the template he left behind, a reminder that in Gangland, Dublin, power is never permanent, and every enforcer eventually becomes a target. That is it for today's video. What is your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments section below, and I will see you on the next video.